Hello and welcome to another Moorside My School podcast. Today, GCSE English and Paper 1, Section A. If you're following the foundation paper, there'll be 5 questions on Paper 1, Section A. The first one will ask you to select evidence. Question 2 will ask you to follow an argument. Question 3 will ask you about facts and opinions. And question 4 and 5 will ask you about language and presentation. If you're following the higher paper, you will not have to answer question 1, select evidence. The main thing to remember in Paper 1 Section A is time management. You must make sure you spend enough time on each question, depending on how many marks are available. For instance, here's a typical select evidence question. The type of question 1 you might get on a foundation paper. Now, we should times the amount of marks available by 1.5. That's how long we should spend on each question. So we see that this is worth 2 marks, so we should spend 3 minutes. If you wish to practice these skills as we work through them, then grab yourself 2 texts, the first of which should be non-fiction. So that means there's plenty of writing, but it's not on a fictional subject, so it's not a story. Things such as an article from a website or a newspaper, a biography, an information leaflet, all these things will be fine. The other text you'll need is a media text, such as an advert from a newspaper or a website, a magazine cover perhaps, a DVD cover, film poster, all of those will be fine. Now, let's move on to the first question that appears on both the foundation and higher paper, the follow an argument question. The thing to remember here is to keep it simple. Firstly, take the number of marks and times it by 1.5. That's how many minutes we're going to spend on this question. Secondly, keep this answer as straightforward as possible. You don't need p-paragraphs here. Just explain in your own words what it is that the author feels about a certain subject. You may want to even do it in bullet points and give the same number of bullet points as there are marks for the question. Why not pause the podcast here and give it a go? Next will be the question on facts and opinions. Now, first of all, we'll take the number of marks and times it by 1.5. That's how many minutes we should spend on the question. Now, the thing to remember here is don't just spot the facts and opinions. Don't just write down where they are. You must explain fully how the facts and opinions have been used. Generally, facts will be put in by a writer to make their opinion sound more believable. If you're unsure about facts and opinions, you should get in touch with your English teacher. You may wish to structure your answer in a p-paragraph here. Why not pause the podcast here and give it a go? Now hopefully, if you've managed your time well, you should have left yourself lots of time for questions 4 and 5. Now these questions will ask you about language and presentation, though they may come in a different order depending on the exam paper. Let's imagine for this podcast that question 4 is the language question. So first of all, we're going to times the number of marks by 1.5. That's how long we're going to spend on it. Now, on the language question, we're going to write in p-paragraphs. We're probably going to aim to write 2 p-paragraphs. Look carefully at the question. If it's asked you to talk about both texts, you must make sure you do this. You must say how they're similar and how they're different. In your p-paragraphs, you must stick to talking about the language. Why has the author chosen certain words? What is the effect that they have? If you wish to practice this, pause the podcast now and try the following question. The presentation question is just the same. Look at the number of marks, times it by 1.5. That's how long you should spend on it. You should be looking to put together 2 p-paragraphs here, and if you're asked to talk about both texts, please make sure you do. In your p-paragraphs, please make sure you stay focused on presentation. That's what the question is asking for. If you get sidetracked and talk about language, there'll be no marks for these comments. Stick to what the question asks. Pause the podcast and have a try. So remember, the foundation paper has a select evidence question. Then, both papers have a follow an argument question, a facts and opinions question, and a language and a presentation question. In all of these, manage your time well. Decide whether to write in P paragraphs or not. And overall, make sure you are doing exactly what the question asks.